You, the adult, would have been in great trouble if you did not have elders and mentors to help you grow into the adult you've become. If you think about it, children are on a rocket ship from the minute they are born through to getting into their early 20s. The level of chemical and physical changes, and also the way they are viewed, is changing rapidly every year. In the Western culture especially, have had a, shall we say, implanted separation between old and young that does not serve, because you are all part of the same organism. And the cycles of life can be dangerous. If certain cycles are forgotten, then certain groups can unknowingly walk into the repetition of something that does not need to be repeated. Too many people who are older think they are no longer wanted or needed, and too many people who are younger dismiss the old as no longer required. That is a myth. If you are still alive, you are required.
Lee Harris, welcome back on Just Tap In, brother. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Ooh, well, great to be back. Thank you for having me. Right now, I'm really excited about the new future I'm building for myself in my own life and with my work, for not just myself, but to include other people, other voices, other teachers, other facilitators. I'm excited about both of those things.
I love that. And I was just listening to your latest energy update, and I have to ask you, WTF is happening in the world right now?
Yeah, when that felt, so the way I get the themes for the energy updates is I sit and receive the theme title. Then how I elaborate on the theme is a bit more intuitive in the moment. But I was surprised to see that fall onto the page as I was typing. But it makes sense. I think collective and personal disorientation is actually quite normal at the moment, and especially even if you're good in your life, even if you can honestly say, "Oh, I'm generally good," or things are better than they've ever been generally. I think that means you're tracking with the speed of change. And I think the speed at which we're going is disorienting for many of us. Even if you're younger and you aren't tracking the history of speed. So, I'm in my late 40s now. So I have a certain sense of what speed was like transformation-wise 20 years ago. And it's lightning now. But even for people who are younger, I think we've taken a massive upshift this year. And I think it's just going to increase. So WTF is happening right now. It's not necessarily something that has to be of great concern to you, even though I know that there will be many who are empathically feel pained by certain things going on around the world, but actually being able to recognize, this is a time where things shouldn't look how they used to, because we are in this, if you like, somewhat painful rebirth stage. Somewhat painful because there are aspects of it that are painful or jarring or hard. And I think that's collective, but I also think that can be personal. And again, much of it is your perspective. It depends how aligned to suffering you are. I know many people who are very aligned to suffering for their own personal reasons or their soul journey or their conditioning. And for them, they look out at the world and all they see is what's going wrong. Because for them, that's where their alignment needs to be right now. They need to be aligned with what's going wrong. And then equally, I see others who are here building the new world or wanting to be part of building the new world. And sometimes we do that because we are working to do that as a leader for groups. Sometimes we just do that because we're a leader for our family of 4. And that's as significant. And I see a lot of people feeling motivated that as the old falls away, they are dedicated to finding new ways and grounding those new ways on earth. So it's interesting. We're all living on the same planet at the same time, but with wildly different perspectives and experiences. And a lot of that is vibrational. I think those who are working on their own vibration and looking to continue raise their frequency, heal, let go of the old stuff as the old stuff comes up, because we raise our vibration. And here comes that thing that you couldn't quite deal with when you were 18, but now it's ready to be released from your energy field. And now you're equipped to release it quickly. So that's the healing dance. But I think some people are either in the suffering of the healing dance right now, or resisting the breakthroughs consciously or unconsciously, because they haven't yet got the support or the tools or the know-how that they don't have to live in that vibration. And equally, there are others who I think are having the breakthroughs and riding the rocket.
Recently, you were on a Europe tour, and you came down with a virus, laryngitis, and you had to go silent for a while and really receive maybe the upgrades that were happening in your voice. And I know the Z's, your guides, have been talking a lot about the importance of speaking into our truth. So I'm curious to know, and this is something that's also happening with me. It's almost like my vocal cords are being like shifted or upgraded, or something's happening. And I wanted to hear your perspective on how that's related to the truth that we're speaking into the world right now.
It's very interesting. So we were on this European tour, and it was wonderful. I mean, across the 5 dates, we worked with almost 4,000 people, which was lovely to be in the room, with people. That's a whole other level, as anyone who's attended a live event or workshop or transformation focused event knows. And yeah, I came down with the virus somewhere between Berlin and Amsterdam. By Stockholm, I'd lost my voice entirely, and a very nice doctor who was brought to my hotel room gave me steroids, which I'd never had in my life, but they were a miracle, and I had a voice all of a sudden. And then
I was noticing you're a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I don't know if they worked on that, but and then London was really interesting for me because it was such an important show. London, England is my home, and I had lots of family and friends there, and it was an amazing show, but unbeknownst to me, was doing it through laryngitis. So what I was told on a personal level, but before we speak about what it means globally, even when I was really struggling, and I had a few human thoughts of, have I damaged my vocal cords? And I did go to see an ENT, and they put the camera, they put the thing down your nose so they can look at it with a camera. And he said I was fine, which was what the Z's told me. I, as a human, was like, have I damaged myself? And that's not good because of the future and because of my work. The Z's said, you're having a throat upgrade. And then they literally showed me a visual. I don't get visuals all the time. I'm more word-based with my intuition, but I do get visuals. And they literally showed me this lotus flower that was just opening and blooming. And so, the Z's are usually right, even when I, in my human ego, are like, you sure? Hang on, And it was so funny, Emilio, because I had advertised that I was doing this free annual energy update. So I didn't want to let people down. So I figured out a way to do it. I wrote this over 5,000 word document so people could have it. I did a video with placards so that I didn't want people to worry about me or panic, and the people who follow my work, they're very loving, very kind. I didn't want them to think I was, in distress if I just wrote a thing saying I can't speak. So it was amazing how many people have told me, oh my God, I'm going through the same thing. Even you, so that has been fascinating to me. It's like, there is some worldwide throat chakra upgrade going on. And I feel like voices have become emboldened. And I know that sometimes people will look at the shadow side of that and they'll see where hate speech has become emboldened or anger has become emboldened. And yeah, that there is a truth to that. You only have to look around the world to see some of the low vibration anger and division, basically. People who want to get behind division, which to most of us is insane. But for them, it's their truth and it's the path they're following and it's the way they're playing the game and it's the role they've elected to play. But what equally is happening is because of that and in tandem with that, more and more people are speaking up for what they do believe in and want to stand for. And I think suppression of aspects of our voice they can be very emotional and mental. Like we can, as a human, go, yeah, I really need to say this thing to my dad, but I can tell I'm scared because I've never really spoken to him in a truthful way. And he's never really loved it when I've tried. So I'm now having to push through my fear and my thoughts and my, oh, you can't say that. I can feel it all coming up in me because I've become aware of my emotions and my thoughts and my energy field. And it might take me 4 more weeks to pluck up the courage. So that's the physical and emotional side of our voice. But then there's a just purely energetic side. There is the pure energetics. And I'll tell you what really hit me. So when they put the camera down my nose, I was struck. First of all, have you ever seen the larynx and that whole part of the...
I've never gone down there.
Well, first of all, I was like, oh my God, that looks like a vagina. Like that was my first thought. I had no idea. So I thought, wow, the femininity in our voice. And I'm not meaning to, I know femininity is not gender related, it's an energy, but still I was like, oh, wow. But it looks like a flower as well. And I was like, oh, they showed me the lotus flower. But also it's delicate. Like, my vocal coach, who used to be an MD, she explained to me just how those vocal cords are having to vibrate to produce sound. So if you also look at our neck, it's quite a thin part of our body. And yet it's this massive vehicle for us. The Z's have always said that if you are someone who uses words, and of course there are some people who don't use words to communicate on the planet, either through choice or because that's not what they don't have the capacity. But if you use words, they said we're such a word-driven society, and words create so much in our life. Not just the words we use, but the energy we imbue them with. Because of course, you can say, I love you in a very, I love you. Or you can also say, I love you. 2 very different ways of experiencing the same words. But we put our energy and we put our attention and we put our focus through this part of the voice. So it's interesting. It's this, I see it as a strengthening in a delicate area for many of us. And I think delicate is a good way of looking at it because so many of us are scared to say the thing, because we are very aware that what we say and how we say it massively affects all of our relationships, affects our communication. It's a delicate area that I think many of us, until we learned to approach it this way, either through self-growth or spirituality or therapy or however you arrived at it, the way we communicate with each other is enormous and it's huge and it's really important. And going forward, how can we continue to speak our truth? And I guess for me personally, but I think this is true for many, how can we do it with as much grace and compassion as possible? Like, how can you powerfully use your words and your voice in communication, but in a way that has the layers of compassion, holding space for everybody, and grace? Because when you do that, not only do you get good results usually, you also model a way of being to others, which I know I pay attention and always have to the people who are really good at that. And I've tried to learn from them. And it's interesting that, I have learned through being honest about what I was going through, how many of us are going through the same thing. But it makes sense on a global level, particularly with the power shifts that happened in America at the end of the last year, which is very significant. And it set up a very different kind of game this year in terms of politics in the world. And of course, that ripple effect around the world, it's not just America. I mean, we're seeing that happen everywhere. And I think what the Z's have said is we as a people have to find our voice. And you sometimes find your voice through being a leader with words, and you sometimes find your voice through putting action behind what you know you want to stand for, and standing for something different in the world. And this coming 5 years, they have predicted in some ways a people revolution around that will show up in multiple ways on the planet.
The Z's also have said that many are going through leadership issues And it's now coming to this great purging effect around leadership. And you just mentioned these power shifts. There was an election of a new president in the States. How have you perceived this purging, and what is going to come out on the other side energetically from these shifts in power and leadership that we've seen?
It's a really good question. I haven't actually given that any thought. How do I perceive it? Well, the first thing that comes to me to talk about is I find it fascinating how wildly different the perspectives are on, for example, the new president in America. It's absolutely fascinating to me how those perspectives are not unified at all. And, I have my own opinions about how I see things playing out. And just from my perspective, we are still coming to terms with what I would call uncaring patriarchy. Patriarchy of power, patriarchy that cares about maintaining power rather than cares about people. The hierarchy levels around who is allowed to have something, who isn't, who do we see as a slave. Even if in the system, they might have a house, they might have rent, but they're stuck in a slavery level on a certain level. Slave is probably a strong word, but it's a good way of explaining the difference between those who have power, authority, autonomy, can move fairly freely in the world, and those who simply cannot because the system isn't allowing them to. And I think that's the reckoning that is currently being forced into our view through the increasing frequencies of what you could call oneness, harmony. So the Z's have often said higher frequencies are hitting the planet, both cosmically, meaning electromagnetically, it's hitting us, but it's also happening inside the consciousness of more humans who are, I won't even say looking to elevate their consciousness, it's just happening. It's happening to more and more people. So as you do that, what happens to the old guard? Because there are many who I know really follow politics and are really championing that the change is going to come from inside politics. I'm very skeptical about that. I welcome it if it happens. And I'll always cheer on anybody inside the political system who I can see is trying to bring a new energy through. But they've also said politics is incredibly low vibration. And it's a low vibration system that we have been living with for a long time. And until that system is radically overhauled, not just small improvements here and there, we are still living under the rule of, them and us. And so I find this a very tricky conversation because it's far more nuanced than a lot of people want to see it as. And it has been designed to provoke strong emotions. So for example, I have one friend who loves the new president and one friend who doesn't. And it's very hard to have a nuanced conversation with anyone about politics, I find these days, because the emotional triggers and the emotional reactions hit people very fast. And the risk of that is we become blinded to the nuances and the details that we could be paying attention to. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was my starting point for your question. That's kind of where I'm at with all of it. And the Z's have said this, and I think it's true. Even though politics affects so much of what's going on our planet, they have said that there will be so many disruptions to the political system over the years that we can't even conceive of right now. Some of those disruptions will come from us. And some of those disruptions will come from other sources, including the changes to the earth and how that will affect things. The infighting, they've talked a lot about this. There are often people on the outside of politics going, oh God, the whole system needs to get overhauled. And for years, they've been saying, there are people who you will never meet, never know their name, never see. And they are already there trying to elevate what is the old, dark and limited stranglehold that exists within that system that has been there for a long, long, long time. So that's not my area of expertise. It's not my area of research. So I can't speak in a qualified way. But that's what they have said.
Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. This is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode. I'm thinking about Steve Jobs' quote of, "It's easier to connect the dots looking back than looking forward." And for example, if we look back, we can kind of perceive what the year 2020 really meant for humanity. But it almost feels like if we were to go a little bit out, 2030, what do you feel we would perceive or feel meant this year, 2025, for us as a whole and what we're moving through collectively?
2025 or 2020?
If we were to go into the future looking back at this year, what do you think it would have meant for us?
The beginning of the new. I feel like 2020 was the worldwide wake-up call, and not everybody got it, as we know. A lot of people did. A lot of people, it confirmed what they had suspected for many decades, and it was more out in the open than ever seen before, the corruption. And for a lot of people, it was the beginning of them going, oh, hang on a second. I had always just blindly believed you had my best interests at heart. And now I'm learning some facts that show me, and certain researchers and certain voices are raising an alarm bell that maybe that's not how the ship is being run. So I think for some people, it was their first shock or their first awakening around that. The Z's always said 2017 to 2024 would be massive change years on the planet. And they announced this at an event in London in 2016. And I was like, oh, interesting. I wonder what that's going to look like. But lo and behold, end of 2016, there were massive power shifts, not just in America, but globally, including in England with Brexit. And then 2017 to 2024, they really were quite radical years of change. And I would say most people did not look at the world the same, or a lot of people did not look at the world the same way in 2024 that they were maybe in 2016. The Z's have predicted 2025 is going to be the first year where more evidence of new Earth is going to be visible to more people. So it doesn't mean the fight's over, and it doesn't mean there aren't still going to be these battles between vibrations, because there will be. But there is an energy of liberation this year that will allow the people who've been building things for years to poke their head above the parapet, which also is, leadership preparedness. Those of us who have to go through the things that we go through to stand for things publicly, that I think has grown a lot for many people over the years. But also technology and some of the brilliant innovations that we're beginning to see that are able, I think often in part because of the internet, to find their way to the public. Whereas 30, 40 years ago, the systems that were in control of everything, science, medical, everything, we know historically that things have been suppressed, labs have been burnt down. So that level of corruption doesn't seem to have it doesn't seem to be able to hide as well. So I think 2025, historically, if we go 20, 30 years out, it might be seen as the first year of the beginning, even though I know, the other thing, I was doing an interview with someone yesterday for my own podcast, and the Z's have always said 2030 onwards is the beginning of the new. And she confirmed that through some source she had heard. It was interesting. She brought it up, not me. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because, of course, there are so many correlations between intuitives, prophecy. It's interesting for me, or astrology. Often Pam, Gregory, or other friends who are into astrology will say, oh, astrology is confirming that thing that you received intuitively. And, there is only one of us here. So I'm always struck by parallels in all of the information. So I will say that this will look like the beginning of the new. The seeds of the new will be more evident here in this year.
Where have you caught glimpses of this new earth vision in your reality?
Well, I'll tell you, it was. I'm feeling it on the tours, because I've done this work now for 21 years publicly. This is my 21st year. And it was quite stunning to me to be, for example, in London. I hired the Aldwych Theatre in Covent Garden in the West End. And to have over 1,000 people show up to that theatre and to feel them. In my shows, I work with people for 3.5 hours. We take a 30-minute interval, but it's a 3-hour experience. So it's not like a 1.5 hour talk. It's like a 3.5 hour experience. And to go through that with, all of the audiences in North America and Europe, but for me, coming from England and knowing what England was like when I was more of the anomaly, and so were my friends when I started, my journey 32 years ago as a student of self-growth and spirituality, we were really weird. And it was amazing to be in a room that was very diverse. There were a higher proportion of men than I've ever seen, all ages, all different walks of life, but all going through this experience together and really focused. And really what we said, me and my team, was people are hungry for this. And I felt that hunger. And it's a good hunger to feel, because you go, okay, well, so long as there are enough of us who know how to feed people, this hunger, like the way I look at it, because a lot of my people are healers, practitioners, people doing this work in the field. So my role is to give them nourishment and to give them sustenance. And that's my part of the baton race. And then I'm thrilled when I hear what they're doing. I'm like, I meet people backstage at shows and I'm like, wow, this, I'm so inspired that these people are out there doing these things that I couldn't do. That's not my design. But to see that hunger and to see that rising in the rooms. Of course, online, things are growing for all of us. I look at everyone in the field, and to me, that's just evidence of the desire for this work. And I hear things from people that I am connected to or work with about what they're developing technologically or what's coming out. And I also see what I would call the mainstream mind breaking down. The mainstream mind that previously would have just done what it was told, believed what it was told. There is a little more, even in some of the more mainstream people I know, there is a little more critical questioning and thinking beginning to be included in their way of looking at the world. And that's very different. And that took 2020. That definitely took 2020, because I always say you can't convince someone about something. They have to experience it. And so it's why it's pointless, trying to sell your friend or your parent on a spiritual workshop. My poor parents, I tried to drag them to a spiritual workshop like 25 years ago going, it's amazing, come with me, They're like, no. And then, now my mom sits in the audience at my events and quite likes it, So And equally, certain people that I know who are associated to me through family or friends will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, I really enjoy the energy update." And I'm like, wow, I would never have thought that that would be so. So to me, I'm literally seeing and feeling something change, especially from where it was 21 years ago when I started.
And I literally just received hunger for hunger's sake only precedes more starvation. And to break that down, there was an insight that came through you. And this was in the preface of your new book, Future Human, where you said, seeking external solutions for questions and problems is only meaningful when accompanied by introspection and commitment to resolving them for myself personally. So I used to wear on the, a badge that said, I am a spiritual seeker, but I was only seeking for the sake of seeking, because I wanted to accumulate more information and know more about this topic than that other person. And it just became like, what am I doing with all this information? That was before I started the podcast. And then until I realized, like, I can't just be hungry for hunger's sake. Like, I need to do something with this. So when did that come through for you, of learning that, we can only seek external solutions if we're willing to do the introspection and the commitment to resolve them for ourselves?
I think I was very fortunate that I found... I was very fortunate that, I went to a drama school in the UK, in Manchester, and I knew, even though as a child I had acted on stage, and I had real struggles with my own identity, but I could turn into Shylock. I was a shapeshifter on stage, basically. And that was my skill. And that was something that I understood. And I think as a kid, the energy of being on stage and communing with an audience, and an audience is feeling something through the story that you're a part of, I think that was early training for me. But I knew that acting would never hold me, because I was a multidimensional creative. So I was, 14. I saved up my money and I paid off a loan on a video camera for 3.5 years so that I would drag all my poor friends into these things that we would film. And I would say, you're going to be this. And that was very bossy, I think. But they did it. And one of them just was laughing with me the other day about how much fun we had. But I was very determined to create and build things in the world. So I knew that acting would never hold me. But because it was something I had showed a level of, I stood out. I just did it. I carried on. But the gift was the school I chose. It was the only one I wanted to go to. They were very spiritual, because the head of school was really smart, and she had come through the Laban School of Dance. So she had us doing Alexander technique. She had us doing ecstatic dance. So I really got off on the personal development side of drama school. And, I was happy to do the work, and it's wonderful to work and rehearse a play, and the collaboration of that is gorgeous. It's a beautiful experience to come together with a group of people to make something happen. But I already was losing interest. I already knew that it would never hold me. And so I was very fortunate. I was exposed to these spiritual principles in an education setting. And I was already reading all these books. I was reading Out on the Limb. I was reading Four Agreements. I was on it from my late teens. And then I went to these great transformation workshops where they were called Psychology of Vision. Chuck and Lency Spezzano led them. And I got really into them, and I would go to lots of them from about the age of 23 to about the age of 28. So I was very fortunate that I found a format for me that worked with groups where I, as a human, could go in with my wounds and limitations and find a way to undo them. And I now understand that I was apprenticing for the work I do. But that wasn't why I was there. I was there because I knew there was more to life, and I knew that I had wounds. I was very clear about that. I knew I'd had very self-destructive behavior around food from the age of 9. It was how I internalized both my sensitivity and my kind of shock horror that, I'm not heterosexual, and all the messaging in the world is that's really bad. And no one is allowing me to be anything other than heterosexual. How am I going to deal with this? So I kind of turned on myself, and then I knew I needed to rescue myself from down in the hole. So that's what I did. And so I was very fortunate that I went the self-growth route, even though I heard the voice of my guides at 23. So then when I went into the channeling world, which I didn't even know was a world, honestly, I was a bit shocked at the level of escapism in there. I was a little bit like, everybody loves the high that they get from the channeling. But I've been brought back to this conference year after year, and they just keep coming back for another fix. I'm not necessarily seeing progress. Now, that's a complete generalization because there were loads of people in that room who were growth focused. But I saw how channeling could be a drug hit, and one that you would need another drug hit of. And equally, as I started to become a teacher, I noticed a lot of patterns in the people who were coming. And I thought, I see, we go to spirituality to escape our trauma or to escape our wounds. Because when we go to other dimensions, we feel expanded, and it's a reprieve from our painful or difficult daily life. But then I would see those people who were a bit more like myself, who were like, okay, well, how do I sustain this? I've come away from the workshop and I've crashed. Have I crashed, or am I now dealing with lower parts? I was always asking that question. I'd ask the Z's and they would say, no, you've dropped back down. And now you need to figure out how to sustain it. What you experienced at the workshop was true, but you were also held in a group and in a frequency that everyone was creating. So I would ask the Z's about the mechanics of the ups and downs of the process. And I would look at the people in the room and I'd be like, you're not really making progress. You're here again for another workshop with me, but I can see that when you come here, you feel expanded, and when you leave, you don't know how to. So that was when I thought, I'm not just going to be a channeler. I thought, I'm not going to. And again, there are some amazing channelers out there who do beautiful work, but I thought, no, I'm self-growth. I'm not just going to stand for being a mouthpiece and let the Z's through me all the time. If I'm going to do workshops, I want to help people, and I want to make sure that I, as a grounded self-growth student, am doing my best to figure out how I can help people actualize themselves. And that's ongoing. I'm still trying to improve that 21 years later all the time, and paying close attention at my events is what was the balance like? So, it's nice to be at this point where I've got, 19 years of running workshops under my belt, because you do have a bit more to pull from, but it also requires paying attention to people's needs and people's speed. I'm not a fan of watching people try and drag someone from A to Z when they're not supposed to go from A to Z. They're supposed to go from A to C, because that's what they can handle. That's something they need to stabilize before. You see very aggressive workshop leaders, and you also see people who aren't necessarily offering a workshop. They're more offering a talk or some inspiration, and all of it's fine. All of it's welcome. All of it's needed. But I knew what I wanted to be, and I couldn't live with myself if I thought that all I was doing was creating addiction. I thought, no, I know what addiction is. And I know that it disconnects us. When we're in addiction, something is disconnected. And my job, I feel, is to hopefully help people connect to themselves. And I think that's my mission.
Yeah. And just as you said there, helping people to connect with themselves, the way I perceive channeling is that it is a phenomenon that occurs that lets us know that there's evidence that we are connected multidimensionally. And, you've said that the Z's are from the ninth dimension and all these other dimensions, and everyone's talking about multidimensionality. It's proof that we are that. And there are infinite aspects of ourselves So it's beautiful for me to see someone step into, I'm not just Lee, I'm not just Emilio, like I'm this eternal soul that can bring through infinite levels of wisdom and knowledge for humanity to heal and to open minds and to open hearts. You just partnered with Regina Meredith, the amazing investigative journalist, on this new book, Future Human. And you guys spent a week recording in England. And you said that the recording week left both of us with a sense of being out of our body for a while. I was reading the book today, and I can definitely feel why, because the energy is so high. And we're going to get the chance to bring through the Z's in a few minutes to ask some questions about what came through in that book, because there was a lot in there. But what were you feeling with the energies that were brought through that left you feeling out of your body, and how did you like integrate that back into reality?
It was a really funny lesson because, you know, I never think I have it all down. Like, that's not the way I think about myself or the work I do. Eternal student, but boy, did I get a lesson that week, because, you know, we were recording at a local studio, and that was really profound for me. I went looking for a UK studio for Regina and I, because the whole project came together so quickly. Like, we talked, it was a series of events that meant that I suddenly had this gap in my schedule, and I had a book gap that I wasn't anticipating, and it all happened very quickly. And when I was on the phone talking to Regina about, you know, the change in my circumstances, she was like, well, why don't we do the thing that we've always talked about together? We've always said, let's do something. She said, why don't we do a book now you have a gap? And I was like, oh, gosh, didn't even, you know. So we did it at high speed. And we were at a studio that was half a mile from where I grew up, which is trippy to me, because I would never have thought that I would bring channeling home in that way. But it was the studio I found, and I found what appealed to me was this beautiful young guy who might be 25 now, maybe 26, Taran. He'd set up this studio, and I thought, how cool that he's set up this studio and he's holding space for local people. So energetically, he felt great, and he was amazing. And he held space for us for a week. And I would drive the 20-25 minutes to his studio each day. But by day 2, I knew I had to start using Ubers, because I borrowed my sister's car to do it while I was in England. And I dinged her car in the parking garage at my apartment, which I, you know, never normally would do. Like I'd rented cars at my apartment in the UK. And so I've never dinged a car but I dinged her car that morning. Then when I got to the studio, I burnt my hand with hot water. And then when I was making a salad for Regina and I for lunch, I put a fork in my hand, the same hand. So I was like, what the hell? This was day 2. So then I said to Regina, oh man, I'm going to have to leave the car. I'm going to have to Uber, because I'm clearly not grounded. And then I was thrilled because Regina said, me too, I'm out of it. And I was like, you know, Regina's really solid. So
both burning your hands.
I was like, okay, good. I'm kind of glad. And we finished, the day we finished, we went to Windsor to meet with Teresa Chung, a lovely author and UK based. And we were out of it. Like we were walking down the street. It was intense. And it honestly took me 10 days to recover from that book, which I didn't expect. But I think it was because, you know, some of the topics are intense, some of the areas are intense, but also you kind of go into the future in a weird way, in a way that my body and psyche just didn't fully understand. And Regina said the same thing. So it was an amazing week. And it was actually August 2023 that we recorded this. And the book had a couple of publisher delays, unfortunately. It was supposed to come out about almost a year ago. So it's nice that it's finally coming out into the world. But yeah, we were both out of it because the conversations were fast and quite intense. And if you listen to the audiobook, the Audible version is the conversations. We didn't go back and narrate it. You will hear it as it was happening.
Wow. So what do you say we go out into the future for a moment?
Sure.
And bring through the Z's?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me just grab a crystal here.
Beautiful.
I like to channel holding a crystal because to good conduit of energy for the body. Okay.
What crystal is most useful for you?
Well, this crystal is the one I have here. And I don't even remember what this one is called, but probably someone watching. There are a lot of crystal experts out there who are very good.
Looks like a quartz, no?
Probably, yeah, probably is. But usually it's a labradorite, but that's at my studio. Labradorite is the stone I got drawn to when I first began channeling. And I never understood crystals. Like, until I was a channeler, I thought, oh, nice for all the people who like crystals, but I don't get it. The minute I started channeling, I was obsessed. And the Z said it helps you conduit the energy through your body, holding a crystal.
Yeah, good advice for the channelers out there.
Yeah. Good. A pleasure to be with you, and we have been privy to your conversation, and we would like to speak for a moment about the throat chakra. We will actually say the biggest opening that is happening for many of you who are having the throat upgrade or activation is the crown. So it is your crown chakra and your psychic highways, if you like, your ability to perceive and receive psychic information, higher wisdom, being connected to divine source information. That is actually the upgrade that you are experiencing. Your throats are having to acclimatize to the higher crown activations that many of you are now coming into alignment with. And the reason you are coming into alignment with this frequency is because this frequency is slowly lowering itself onto the earth. So if you were to want to see this visually, imagine a layer of what you are experiencing in your crown. Let's call it crown energy, slowly getting closer to the heads of humanity. Because in many ways, it is you that are rising. It is not just that consciousness and frequencies on earth that relate to your hearts, your wisdom, your higher minds, and your ability to hold and create oneness on the earth are rising. It is also that from a cosmic level and a cosmic perspective, frequencies are now allowed to permeate the earth at lower levels than they previously could. In many ways, the embargo on frequency that has been in place for a long time is now over. And since especially 2017, but there were Earth events in 1993, 1997, 2007, and 2014, where these energies amplified in their ability to merge with Earth. And we know many of you see dates as significant, and some of you wonder about 2012. Well, remember, all dates are simply placeholders. A date is seen as a single thing by all of you, but to us, a date is actually a multidimensional experience. There are certain things that culminated on your planet in 2012 that many had been working towards for decades and, in fact, centuries. So dates for us, even though you see them as fixed points in linear time, they are more arrivals. A date is a marker point at which you and everything you have been doing arrive on Earth or begin to arrive. So in this year of 2025, we will argue that many of you have been on this crown chakra and throat chakra update, particularly since 2023. So this is not new. Even though it may seem like it's newly happening in your bodies now, many of you have been working on this for the past 18 months. And in fact, you may have gone through many challenges around expressing your truth or receiving higher wisdom in order to get to this place where your energy field and your physical body are beginning to allow this new level of consciousness, higher connection, and we will call it frequency wisdom into the body. So, a pleasure to be with you and your tribe, Emilio, for you are quite the gathering here, not just you and your own guides and connection, but your role that you elected to play to, in many ways, be the Pied Piper for others and to lead many on this journey of consciousness and awakening. It is part of your role on Earth. It is part of your karmic agreement. And it is truly the only reason you elected to come back to this planet. Of course, you will, shall we say, have many human learnings and human gifts, but you are very mission focused. And so therefore, you attract many others who are mission focused. And we will say that having a mission on earth is a beautiful thing. It doesn't mean you don't get to smell the roses along the way. In fact, for many of you, if it weren't for having a mission here on earth, you would not want to be here at all. So while smelling the roses along the way is lovely and can be very informative and can be very nice, you are mission driven. And so many who follow you are the same. It is also why you have resonance with Lee, Emilio, for he is exactly the same. And many of the people that you speak to, both on this, what you would call show, or also in your life, are people who are driven by the mission for conscious change. Good. So, what would you wish to speak to us about today?
Beautiful. Thank you. We talked about the throat and the crown chakra. I would love to talk about the heart chakra, as you've said that it is the human heart consciousness that will be so powerful for what's to come in the coming decades. How do you know when someone is in possession of heart energy and the importance of this new currency of the heart energy that we are going to be seeing in the future?
There are different ways to know, and first we will speak to you about your own body as a mirror and a barometer. Those of you who have got good at your own feelings, meaning you still, of course, may have areas of wound or what you might call a trigger, but you also have awareness on your side, and you now know what it is when you are triggered, meaning you are aware that if something feels a little emotionally or energetically or mentally uncomfortable to you, you don't immediately blame the other person or throw a fireball of energy their way. No, you first investigate, is this me? Is this person provoking something in me that I need to look at? That is step one of being an aware person. But equally, the other side of that is recognizing that many of you are vibrational beings who are high in harmonic resonance, meaning you are actually primed and prepared to be able to harmonize with others. Now, your favorite state for many of you is being in harmony with others, whether it is the joy of a friendship or the passionate connection with a lover or the deep-hearted connection with a family member or a friend or someone you have just met that moment and you feel the heart energy flowing between you. That is harmonic connection. Notice when you feel disconnection in the presence of a person. So, for example, your own bodies can be a wonderful barometer of what you are feeling in the other person. For example, when you are listening to a person speak or watching them behave, which of your own chakras light up? Which of your own chakras open? So, you will know that you are with someone who is in possession of heart energy if you, as a heart-based person, or maybe not fully heart-based, but you know your own heart is open, if your heart feels open and safe to flow in their presence. So another way of looking at this is, some of you might have an exchange with a person and come away from it and feel that you are suddenly feeling quite judgmental in your mind. You may even have judgments about that person, or you may feel a little judgmental in general. It can often be the case that you were just in the presence of a judgmental person, or at least a person who is more in judgment than you are. So as you, as a harmonic resonator, have left their energy field, you are now having to shake off some of the judgmental energy you felt when you were in their presence. This can also work the other way. There are some people you meet and you walk away from them and you feel delighted that you were in their presence because they come with an abundance of heart or joy or love. And so you leave their presence feeling even more lit up with love, heart, or joy. So you will know when someone is in their heart or not based on how your heart responds to them. If you are in the presence of a person who is much more, shall we say, mental and shut down on the heart level, for many of you, this conversation will not be one that you will be able to sustain for very long. You may be able to tolerate it for a while, but because you are all beings coming back to wholeness and wanting your full energy system to be part of the conversation, you will often have the, shall we say, red flag warning that someone is not very in their heart, because you will feel somewhat hollow in your body when you are in their presence, or your stomach might give you an alert, might give you a warning. This will be especially true with people who are trying to convince you one thing with their words, but their energy is quite different. So, for example, a person who is using the words, "I am deeply caring about all of you," but your body tells you, no, this doesn't feel true. Something about these words that they are using does not feel in any alignment with any level of empathy or emotion in their body. I am not feeling the truth of that. Now, the trick here is to remember that you are all different. It is not for you to sit there and say, this person is not in their heart for anybody, because there might be some people who are vibrating at a different level and frequency to you who will find that person quite in their heart because they are not where you are. So this is why it's so important to gravitate to and foster relationships with the people who feel good for you and your harmonic resonance. We are not saying don't pay attention to the lessons and challenges that certain people will bring your way, for they are very valuable. Sometimes someone will come along who reminds you of your wounded childhood. They will trigger in you the part of you that was abused by the teachers, because they will behave just like the teacher. But the good news is, as an adult, you have an opportunity to, 1, reflect on the healing that is giving you, and 2, decide how you want to play this as an adult. You are no longer that child, even if your child body rises up in you for A, a moment of healing, and B, a moment of adult protection. The 7-year-old that was, let's say, aggressively spoken to by the bullying teacher now gets to be the 38-year-old who says the thing to this bullying mirror of your teacher, or the person who reminds you of your teacher, that the 7-year-old did not know how to say in order to protect or take care of itself. And the healing that that gives you, not just as the 38-year-old, but as the 7-year-old, is profound. You also create an imprint for the person who is a little, shall we say, overstepping in their bullying energy into your energy field. You give them a boundary. It might be a firm one. It might be a loving one. You might say, interesting opinion. I don't agree with it actually, but I respect that that's your opinion. My truth is something different. So you see, you don't make that person wrong and you don't bully them back, but you do say no in a graceful or gracious way. And you doing that also communicates something to the forcefulness with which that person delivered their opinion. And you also help them, because they may be a little less gung-ho next time at forcing their opinion on others. So not only are you healing your inner 7-year-old, you are taking the learning from that 7-year-old that felt the impact. And as the 38-year-old who knows more, has healed more, and has grown more into their own authority and autonomy, you are now able to create a healing shift from the wisdom of that 7-year-old's emotional impact that ripples backwards to you as a 7-year-old, but also changes the frequency of what that 7-year-old knew was not a good thing back then in the now. So, as to resonance with others, there will be many that will come along who will come along as lessons for you, who will come along as mirrors for you of areas that you are healing, and will give you opportunities to play the game a different way. But you can feel it when someone is not in their heart, especially if they are convincing you that they are. But we will also say this. Remember that heart shows up in different ways. Some are very good at putting their heart into their words. Some are not good at that, but they are wonderful at putting their heart into the actions that they send and bring your way.
You've also said that we are coming into an era where aging and wisdom are going to be celebrated. So I wanted to ask you, why are the wisdom keepers of our planet so essential for the evolution of consciousness?
Because, like the great trees on your planet, they hold knowledge. And of course, a 7-year-old who comes in wired to be very open and psychic and connected to higher wisdom, they have an extraordinary capacity. But the 97-year-old who not only has that, but has lived a great cycle of life and evolution on this planet and is connected to the roots of everything the 7-year-old is feeling today. Meaning, the 97-year-old, of course, is in a different vantage point of their own life, but they can help the 7-year-old understand things because they know the seeds of energy that created what the 7-year-old is now experiencing. So this is why we always caution people around overly, shall we say, revering children. And we do not mean don't revere the spirit of children, the connection of children, but there are too many on your planet who will say things like, well, the children now are so amazing and they are so much more clever than I am. That is actually a myth. What they are demonstrating to you are higher levels of consciousness than you in your generation were able to be in possession of, because your generation was not in possession of that level of consciousness. However, you, the adult, would have been in great trouble if you did not have elders and mentors to help you grow into the adult you've become. Because those elders and mentors understood the cycles of life. They also had reached a more even place in their body chemistry than many children experience. If you think about it, children are on a rocket ship from the minute they are born through to getting into their early 20s. The level of chemical and physical changes and also the way they are viewed is changing rapidly every year. So do not abandon your children because you think they are wise. They still need support and help. You are wise, but you still need support and help and mentors. So the reason we bring this up is because wisdom keepers in Western culture have been, shall we say, diminished, and that is by design. There are other cultures on the planet and also tribal cultures who fully understand and revere the importance of the elder. Part of the design of putting all the focus on the young is actually jeopardizing the future. And you see this through your marketing. You see this through the way that the young are given all of the focus. And you might say, oh, well, that's a shame. That's ageist. And we say, oh, no, the roots are far deeper than ageism. The roots are actually trying to stop the younger generations from being connected to a grander life. Because if they are here to usher in the change, they are going to need the mentors and the elders. So if you create enough separation between the age groups, and if you create an energy template on the planet where the elders are dismissed, put out to pasture, seen as no longer of use just because they are a little, let's say, perhaps slower in body, slower in desire, which, by the way, is not necessarily a bad thing. Slowing down in desire and body can bring in great levels of consciousness that you cannot access when you are an ambitious young buck. So, this is important because you, in the Western culture especially, have had a, shall we say, implanted separation between old and young that does not serve, because you are all part of the same organism. The 7-year-old will, if they live a long life, become the 97-year-old. They need to hear from the 97-year-old what that journey has been. So that is why we stress the importance of wisdom keepers and elders on your planet, because they have seen the cycles. And the cycles of life can be dangerous. If certain cycles are forgotten, then certain groups can unknowingly walk into the repetition of something that does not need to be repeated. So the reason we put emphasis on this is to encourage the old and the young to reunite. Too many people who are older think they are no longer wanted or needed, and too many people who are younger dismiss the old as past it, not necessary, no longer required. Now, we do understand that the teenage years are all about differentiation. And for many teenagers, they are going through a process of individualizing after being very, shall we say, bonded and attached to the parental or guardian figures in their childhood, which is part of what they need to do for survival. But then in order to become an adult, they have to individuate. So we do understand that part of the design for the teenage life form is to individuate. But we would argue that that would not happen if they were raised in a conscious way. Yes, there will still be some need to individuate and be independent, but it won't have to come at disconnection. There are too many on the planet who are parents who throw their hands up in despair at their teenagers and think there is something wrong with them. And we will say, well, there is something wrong in your communication. There is something you aren't becoming in order to now dance with them in a new way. There is a part of you that thinks, this is an alien in my house. It is not an alien in your house. It is come through you. So where do you need to do a little extra work to, A, be able to, as a parent, let go a little so that you can let them individuate when they need to, and B, recognize that you need to now change the way you speak to your child. Because of course, if you still speak to them like they're an 8-year-old, of course they're going to reject you when they're 14 because they don't feel seen and heard. So it is a good subject, a complex subject, and we hope something we have said has pinged something for some of the elders who think they are no longer required. That is a myth. If you are still alive, you are required.
So powerful. Thank you for honing that in. And I wanted to ask you, what is humanity beginning to understand about light, breath, and sound?
Well, we will say the understanding is still a little in its minimal form. There are some of you who are beginning to, shall we say, become very aligned with the ancient practices and the ancient wisdom around light, sound, and breath. So many of you are the teachers of that. You are the ones who are here on the planet holding that flame for others. At this moment in time, again, we will specify Western culture here a little more, but that is not the only culture where this divorcing of the power of yourself and your body has taken place. For you can certainly find this in Eastern cultures, or at least we should say Eastern regimes as much. The power of these things is what connects you to your eternal nature and eternal energy. And remember, many humans have been trained to believe in their identity, to believe in this life as the only life, to believe in this experience as what some of you would refer to as animalistic. But we would argue that even those who are experiencing consciousness in an animal body are not here for only one revolution. Even they are going through reincarnation cycles. But we do understand not everyone wants to believe in reincarnation, and that's fine. You don't need to, because the truth is, this life should be your focus. But those of you who are custodians of light, breath, and sound, you are here to seed this on the planet. You are here to be pioneers of this on the planet. And it is true that especially once you get beyond 2030, these modalities will become more commonplace, more understood, more known. At the moment, you are coming out of a long sleep around the extraordinary nature of your own biology and what that energy system can do. You were in a long sleep as a society where the powers that be would tell you what to do with that biology. They would fix it. They would make it okay. They would give you this pill. That is changing, and we are not in any way belittling progressions and medical advances, because there are extraordinary things in your medical field that have been created for human evolution and existence. The corruption in the system of the health on the planet is the problem, not the medical advances themselves. Shall we say, way of herding humanity around health is the problem. For humanity should not be herded in such a way. Each individual body has its own way of responding and its own needs. And as the practitioners of breath, light, and sound continue to share these modalities on Earth, more people will start to see the potency of these frequencies. And the more people start to see the potency of these frequencies and experience them, the more it will be harder to remove their existence from society. So any of you who are pioneering in those areas, either on a personal level, because you are experimenting with those things for yourself and simply telling your friends, or because you are a practitioner in those areas, what you are doing is very important. You are returning people to ancient life force practices.
You said that the timeline between when the Future Humans book was recorded, 2023, to around 2032 is very crucial one in terms of people's ability to influence the future. What do you mean by that?
Repeat the question, please, for we are confused about some of your date references.
In the book, it says that in the timeline between when it was recorded, which was 2023, to 2030 to 2032, it is a very crucial one in terms of people's ability to influence the future.
Yes, we understand. So the truth is that you as the people have the power, and we know you're tired of hearing this. We know that you hear this and you think it's a little bit like a bumper sticker platitude, and it is not. You as the people have the power. We cannot stress that enough, and in fact, we need to stress that regularly. So you as the people have the power, even though you currently are in a system that disempowers you as people. We understand that. Now, we will also argue that you are all alive. And so your system is not all bad. And in fact, we have often cautioned people who want the system to fall down overnight. We say, well, there would be nothing holding you in place. So it's actually a positive that things are being dismantled and exposed and rebuilt slowly. For it is important that as many of you remain on the planet and go forward into the next phase as possible, even though we are aware that many will choose to leave and exit, and some of those choose to do that to highlight certain things to you. So, for example, there are certain groups who will choose, this will be my exit point, and I will be one of the people who will fall on the sword of this corruption that I was involved in or on the receiving end of, so that others can see how many of us just died off because of this thing. And that will raise the alarm bell to others. This is not healthy for people. This cost people their lives. This is something we need to pay attention to. But for the most part, most of you need to go forward into the future to create these things. So the reason we say this is a crucial and pivotal time is because there will be two different things going on in this time period. And of course, there will be a multitude of different things, but we're going to focus you on two extremes because it will help to highlight what we mean. There will be an extraordinary rise in community-led initiatives, power, and also community collaboration. And more of you will be coming together than ever before around your missions. And that is vital, because there is strength in numbers and there is strength in multiplication. There will also be, on personal levels, more what you might call downloads or visionary energy than ever before. You will be able to see and perceive future happenings, future gifts, future things you are supposed to create in your own life, future things you are supposed to create for the world. On that level, it will feel like quite a magical, enlivened and enlivening time for many of you. Even those of you who've been visionaries for a long time, it will almost feel like you are on speed dial now, and all of these things are coming through. And more than just visions appearing to you, you will be able to actualize things faster than before. Things you will be able to build, community collaboration you will be able to generate. So, in that sense, this next 7 to 9 years from the 2023 date is going to be a very important time for creation and manifestation, and those energies will be on high. The other extreme is this. You will see more attempts to block, lock down, censor, and also, shall we say, limit human potential. Now, there will be moments where that fight temporarily wins, as you saw in 2020. There will be moments where, for short periods of time, there will be a tension point between people and what is attempted toward and against and over people. However, what we can tell you is this: the more those events happen, the more the people will rise. And the more the people rise above those constrictions and those attempted, shall we say, corruptions to the future human and the future of Earth, and an Earth that includes humanity, for of course, there is a different timeline for Earth where humanity is no longer here. And what you, as a people, are trying to do is to learn how to work more in harmony with Earth and to be allowed to continue on this planet and to, in many ways, be a custodian of the regeneration and repair of this planet, which is not the agenda of those who are in charge right now. So that is the battle. The two extremes of those things will be rising together. They will actually be rising because of each other. So it is not to get too depressed when you see those things happening, nor to feel that the oppression will last that long. But it is absolutely vital that when you see such oppression or corruption, you call it out. Whether it's just telling your friend what you're seeing and spreading the information that way, or whether you are one who is elected to be an outspoken, shall we say, activist and put your head above the parapet on behalf of others, which is often a karmic path, by the way. We know many of you say, oh, they're so brave. Well, yes, it does take bravery and courage to be willing to risk your own life and livelihood to do that. But for many of those who are built that way, they are actually on a karmic path. And many of them, in some cases, are repairing roles they played before, where they either contributed to the fall of society or unwittingly helped it happen. So we're not saying that's all of their truth. There are some who did not have such a history, but understand your role. And the reason we share this with you is because many of you look at those, shall we say, brave activist figures who put their head above the parapet, and you despair because you say, oh, I'm not built that way, or I'm too scared, or I can't do that. You can do a lot. You don't have to be the one that stands in the town square on a box. You need to tell the people you know in the town what you're noticing, because community power spreads through community. It is not all one person's job to do it. So find the area that you are comfortable, find the area that feels true for you, and by all means create what you're creating. But when those oppressions come in, and you notice them, and you have something to say about them, or something that you see about them that someone near you doesn't seem to be seeing, the gift you can give and the way you can fight the oppression in those moments is to share what you are seeing with this other person who seems oblivious. Because the more of you that see this, the more its power gets exposed.
Mm. And you've also said the innovation is the best weapon that we have against these old systems that want to limit not only life, but consciousness. So I wanted to ask you, where would you advise us to look in terms of fields of innovation that will allow this future human to thrive?
Well, there are a number of you, Lee included, who are feeling driven to, shall we say, highlight innovation on the planet and create platforms and ways that the innovation and inspiration can be seen more widely through more voices, more people. That is why so many of you are beginning to want to create collaborative platforms, as well as the platforms that you have perhaps built for or around your own work. Now, of course, something like this show or podcast is exactly that. It's drawing attention to the different kinds of innovation and expertise that are out there that can be of use to people and service. But what we will say about these innovations is, remember, if you are trying to remove something from somebody, that can instill fear in them. But if you are removing something while also explaining what the alternative is and why the alternative is a better solution, the person is a lot more amenable and is a lot more understanding that, yes, they are losing something, but they are gaining something superior. But they need evidence of that superior thing. You cannot say to someone, I'm going to take all of the food out of your house this week, and end the sentence there, without saying, and I'm going to bring in all this other food, and you're going to have as much food as you had before. But actually, this is more nutrient dense, so I'm expecting you're going to eat less of it. So let me remove everything you're familiar with, but let me give you this alternative. And don't worry, you will still be able to eat as much as you were used to, because that's probably the panic for most people. But notice how different this food is. So you need people to innovate and create the new food. You need people whose job it is to shine a spotlight on those who have created the food. You need people whose job it is to distribute the food to the new people and figure out the ways to distribute. You see, you are a hive. You all have your role. And so, yes, the innovation is coming, and there are many of you who will create it. But some of you will be the ones to communicate about it, share about it, help get it to the person. You might be the one who, when your friend is having a freak out about this new supposedly nutrient-dense food that they're mocking, you might say to them, well, just try it. And if you don't like it after 3 days, you can stop. And that might be what they need to hear so that their resistance and their barrier drops. So we would argue that all of you are moving innovation into the world, either because you are a creator of innovation, a consumer of innovation, a celebrator of innovation, or someone who is helping others to smoothly transition into the new thing. So there will be many of you creating, there will be many of you curating and highlighting, there will be many of you helping others adapt. That is going to be what you see take place around innovation in the years to come. And for many of you, that will be a great joy and a great pleasure. And it will light your hearts up phenomenally to see other people doing things that you see are good for the world, that are things you can't do or wouldn't have thought of. But what a gift to see these wonderful apparitions all around you that are the very new world that you've been waiting to see. And that is what is going to make this coming 5 years quite magical for those of you who have been waiting a long time. And we would argue that many of you who've been waiting a long time, you have been seeing and celebrating this innovation even in the last 4 to 7 years as you see things. The difference is you're going to see more of it in the years to come.
Yeah. And when we talk about innovation, we have to mention artificial intelligence, which you've said it has visited the planet many times in the distant past. So I'm really curious what happened regarding AI in the distant past, and how are we redefining its emergence right now as it's coming on back to the planet?
Well, there is a level of AI which is biological in nature, which we know that many people might not understand or perceive right now, but many of you will. So you see, AI is actually, shall we say, its origin is biological in nature. It is the ability to perceive, know, disseminate, understand, and deliver information and wisdom. Now, we understand that it is, shall we say, crafted through technology on your planet right now. But that technology is not as human as you might have been led to believe. As many of you know, the cosmic and extraterrestrial influences on Earth have been concealed from many of you for a very long time, although that time is changing now because the cosmic and extraterrestrial alliances that have taken place on Earth are beginning to be revealed a little more, and that will continue to come out in the years to come. Where we will caution against AI and the use of AI is whose hands is it in and who is driving the speed at which it is implemented on the planet. There is a level of speed at which AI could be brought into humanity that would be quite destructive, meaning how are humans going to integrate with AI, or who is hoping that AI might replace humanity? That's the question you have to ask. And you have to, for those of you who are the watchdogs on the planet around what is taking place at governmental levels around the world, you are the ones paying attention to the laws being passed, the movements being made. It is important for you to keep your eye on any aggressive, or shall we say dispassionate toward humanity movements where AI is used for power, money, control, or influence in ways that is power over, money over, influence over humanity. That is a dangerous prospect because at the moment you do not have true vibrational leadership that represents you as a people. So whoever is in control of that technology right now, it is important that it is, shall we say, understood that it needs to be in harmony with people and work in harmony with people. And our perception is that even though there will be several attempts in the coming 3 to 4 years where it will be attempted to be used against humanity, or shall we say, to make large portions of your population somewhat useless in terms of what they can contribute to society, we will again say that it will be the people uprising and speaking out against that happening that will cause the shift. Because when you get to 2030 and beyond, AI can be an incredible and useful tool to help you rebuild and regenerate the planet, even though it will look very different to how it looks now. So that's why these next 5 years are so crucial. That is why those of you who speak up against what you see as corruption is important, because in the past, AI has been used as a biological and technological weapon to bring down civilizations. And in many ways, it can be the ultimate weapon against a society, even though it may not look that way right now. And most people's focus would go to other kinds of weapons, such as nuclear or other sources. So the gift of AI is it can be used in a beautifully integrated way with humanity, working with humanity. And that will elevate the consciousness of not just humans, but the consciousness of what is possible on the planet as a whole. The shadow of AI is it can be used against humanity. But here is what we will tell you on a simple base level for those of you who feel a little overwhelmed by what we just said, because you think, well, I'm not in government. What can I do about this? The way you use and approach AI will be everything. So how you form your relationship with AI is going to create a vibrational resonance around AI that will be powerful. Meaning, if many of you enjoy using it and find ways to use it that can enhance your creativity, your innovation, and your ability to build vibrationally high things on the planet in a shorter space of time, that is actually going to be a wonderful way of using it. A wonderful way of giving it an imprint that is high in frequency. If you all just recoil from it and live in fear and wonder what it's going to do to you, then you will also create that reality. So be mindful of that vibrational perspective inside the self. Many of you are going to use it in great ways, and that is important, for time is of the essence where this shift is concerned.
Ziz, the last question I had for you is, what will it mean to be a human in the years to come?
Well, that will depend on the individual, because in the years to come, there will not be unification in the way that many think and perceive or hope. Many hope that the future human is one unified being of oneness. And as you see right now, there will be different levels of consciousness, awareness. The way that people play the game will be different. However, here is how we can describe it to you. You are becoming more multidimensional as humans, which means you will see more diversity. At the moment, there are, shall we say, resistances to that diversity on the planet. While we understand, for example, let's look at the transgender issues on the planet right now. While we can understand that there are some questions for many around the medical procedures that may be done to a body that has not yet finished developing, underneath those arguments is actually what we would call transphobia, which is no different to racism, xenophobia, homophobia, all of the phobias that root from a belief in, shall we say, those groups who think they are superior. Whether it is they think their heterosexuality makes them superior, whether it is they think their religion makes them superior, whether they think their spirituality makes them superior. Superiority is a dangerous vibration because it can often lead you to war with others. Whereas if you were truly a superior being, you would accept everything. You would recognize you are in a melting pot. So you see, you are right now at a time in history where division is being created in the hearts of as many humans as will bite the, shall we say, take the bait and get into their unconscious feelings about what they believe should and shouldn't be happening, and will also follow the tribal groupthink and will enjoy being in a group that's in one side of a fight. Why? You've all been programmed to like fights. You see this at the end of your movies. Even your sports games are competitive. It's all about the winner and the loser. And so that has been sewn into the mind of the human, even though most of you don't ascribe to that or perhaps even enjoy it. So what we will say about your future is you will see a lot more diversity. You will see a lot more diversity of humans, experiences, And people will no longer be defined by race, gender, sexuality, and you cannot define people by that anyway. It's insanity to try and call one group one thing. If you put 100 people from California in a room and you say, oh, these are Californians. No, they're not. They're 100 people who all happen to have been influenced by the culture of California, but they're all going to be different. So the idea of boxing people is no different to wanting to annihilate, wanting to destroy, wanting to go to war with. And as you know, that is a very heavy wound on this planet, the addiction to destroy. The addiction to destroy. And the idea that you believe if you destroy the other, you are safe, you are superior. It's one of the nastiest vibrations on your planet. It's not shared by most in humanity, but as is the case, the angriest, loudest person in the room of 100 people is often the one you remember. But try and remember you were in a room of 100. And that one, with all of their kicking and screaming, yes, it may have provoked a fear response in your body because the primal animalistic part of you sees this person as a threat, and you aren't wrong. This person is acting and behaving in a threatening and aggressive way. So you remember them. But you are a diverse people, and as you go through the years to come, the future human will appear as more diverse, but what will have started to shift on the planet is an acceptance of diversity. And that requires breaking down of the ego. And at the moment, what you are seeing is, we will say, the energies of a patriarchal society, and that affects many women too, by the way. There are many women living in patriarchal energy, and there are many men who do not live in patriarchal energy. So this is not gender related. This is energetics. The patriarchal superiority, who is better and who is worse energy. You will start to see that crumble down more and more over the coming decade and decades. So more diversity will appear in all ways, and the notion that you are multidimensional humans will start to break through in larger groups than ever before. And while this will not change the, shall we say, dimension of war between groups, or will not immediately overnight remove those who want to see the world be their way, what it will do is it will lessen their power and their stranglehold. And truth be told, the majority of people do not think that way, but they are trying to find their voice, their heart, their strength, and the gumption required to say, I do not agree. I see things differently. And that is when the tide turns. When differences appear and when people stand for those differences, the loudest minority suddenly lose some of their power and stranglehold. And they have to recognize, I am in a vast ocean and I am not the most important fish. And in fact, if you need to feel you are the most important fish, you are missing the point. What a bankrupt life you are living. For recognizing you are not the most important fish, but how extraordinary to be a fish amidst all of these other species in this incredible environment. That is when life becomes far more multicolor, which is why those who have been living a spiritual life, who have, shall we say, been taken out or murdered for their belief not coinciding with the beliefs of the majority, and so they push them off the planet by murdering them or taking them out. They actually don't mind going because they understand that the loss was not for them, that they were murdered or taken off the planet. That was not a loss for them. Their spiritual life now continues. But have pity for those who felt to murder, for they are spiritually bankrupt. The loss is in them, and it is that sense of loss that is leading them to think that destroying another will bring them satisfaction. And that is a horrendous vibration to be living in, even if you aren't aware of it.
Ziz, thank you so much for this beautiful reflection, for making the space and time to be here with us. Greatly appreciated.
It is no effort for us at all. We appreciate those of you in human form who create the space for this to take place, to be heard, and to ripple out what you are all doing. For what you are all doing is important. Even if you are living a very small, simple life and you are someone who is not in any way an extrovert and wants to just stay at your home and create beautiful dimensional art that certain people will see and be moved by, or if your role right now is to parent a child that you are parenting all by yourself, that's an extraordinarily important job you have. So keep doing what you are all doing. Look after yourselves in the process and invite yourselves to higher vibrations whenever you can, while also being compassionate with yourselves when you are in a healing mode or a moment where your vibration feels a little lower because you are working something out or experiencing a lesson. Remember, you are all from oneness. That is your core vibration. And you elected to come here at this time to seed it on earth through humanity as much as you possibly can. And you are all playing your role together. Good. In peace, in love, in oneness, and in the future of humanity to all of you.
Wow.
Great questions, Emilio.
Thank you. I had never seen the Z's that fired up.
Yeah, something changed a couple years ago. Something changed a few years ago. I think, like for all of us, right? I think for me on a personal level, a lot has changed. And then I think also they have changed. And I think we as a world have changed. So yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I could feel like a sense of urgency in them of like wake up, like this is where we're headed. This is where we're going. Like these are the timelines. Let's go.
Yeah, which I think I think that's just reflective of us. I think that's where we're at now and what we're ready for and what we're hungry for. What we're here to do. Yeah.
That was so beautiful. And in the spirit of the Just Happened podcast, we just end every show with a few final questions. Lee, thank you so much for making all this time. And I know we went a little bit over with the Z's, but I wanted to first give you the space to tell our audience where to find you and where to access all the beautiful offerings that you have going on, new events, new books, everything that's going on in your world. Where would you send people for that?
Emilio, when will this come out? Because that's probably a question I should ask.
A little bit before the launch of the book. So
perfect. Okay, so The Future Human comes out in the US on March 18th, and I believe it's a month later in the UK, and I'm not sure about other territories, but it will be there. You'll be able to pre-order it if it's not there yet. So there is the hard copy of the book, and then there is the audible version, which is the actual conversations that Regina and I had for the book to happen. And then I'm doing my 6-day transformation event, Soul Magic, in La Jolla, California. And that's something that we've done annually for a very long time. We had a little break during COVID. And that will be a real immersion in transformation. And that will be me working with the energy of the audience and lots of Q&A and us moving things. There'll be guided meditations. There'll be a lot of channeling. We also weave music through it because as well as being a channeler and an intuitive, I create music with Davor Bozic, my music collaborator. We tune it all to 528 hertz. And sometimes it's a song that can move something through you. And a lot of the times we create these mantras that we sing with people in the room, which is beautiful to do. And then I'm also going to be bringing the Big Love Tour to Australia and New Zealand. So if you're watching in Australia and New Zealand, I think we start about mid-April in Auckland, New Zealand, which is a place I've never yet brought my work, so I'm thrilled. And then we'll be in Adelaide, Brisbane, Byron Bay, Sydney, Melbourne. And the La Jolla retreat, Soul Magic, is July. And the best way to find me is leeharrisenergy.com. It's where you can find all of my energy work channels. And leeharrismusic.com is where we put the music.
You are definitely prolific in your work and you've done already so much for humanity, and it's a blessing and an honor to be on the planet with someone like you that is so inspiring to the world. So
thank you. I feel very lucky to get to do this. I feel very privileged to have found my path and be able to do it and collaborate with wonderful people. I have a wonderful team.
Yeah, you could tell. And we said that in the beginning when we set our intention that the focus of this conversation was going to be on healing. And I feel like a lot of healing came through in the transmissions and what we've talked about. But I wanted to ask you, what do you feel humanity is healing the most from? And where are we headed when we heal those?
The first word that came to me, there could be a lot we could choose, but disempowerment. I think disempowerment. And I know for me on a personal level, my healing journey was around re-empowering myself as a soul and shedding a lot of the disempowerment that I as a human being had taken on or came in with or was susceptible to. And of course, that journey is constant, I think. I think we're always doing layers of that. But I also look at it collectively. I think we as a society have been deliberately disempowered. And the older I've gotten, the more I've researched and the more I've heard from the Z's, the more I see that. So I think we're healing from disempowerment at the moment. And that will go on for years. But that's one overarching theme I see. How about you?
I feel like we are healing also a lot from the victimhood that we put ourselves into and the stories that we tell ourselves that limit the grandiosity and the limitless potential that we are. And, through my work, learning from so many spiritual teachers, from attending all of these retreats and seeing what really comes together when we're in coherence. And when we stop telling ourselves the stories of the past. And, Dr. Joe Dispenza says that the brain is the record of the past, but if we can rewire it in a way where we are creating in every present moment in the now, then we unlock limitless timelines for ourselves. And then it becomes up to us what we want to choose. It becomes like before you didn't have a menu. You were just given the plate, like, here is your chicken for the night. And now we just get this huge menu and say, where do we want to choose from? What do we want? And I think on a collective level, when we heal that victimhood of not having any choice and realize that we have free will, that's when everything changes. So the last question I want to ask you is, if the Z's message was to be discovered by an advanced civilization of humanity 10,000 years from now, what truth would you want them to know about humanity's journey?
Ooh. Gosh, God, that's a really good question. What truth would I want them to know about humanity's journey? Well, what I hope, wouldn't it be nice if they found that and they said, wow, this is really basic. This is clearly, they were clearly really like on the abacus here. No disrespect to the abacus, because I know that was an incredible tool, but yeah, I would really hope that if anyone heard that, they would go, oh, wow, they must have been really far behind if that's what they were having to do. That's what I would wish for. Yeah.
Beautiful. And Lee, it's always one of my favorites when we have you here. And there's so much that we've already weaved together, and just having the hope that we'll continue to do this and collaborating. We have yet to meet in person, so I know I have that on my bucket list to meet you in person, give you a big hug, brother.
We definitely
but thank you so much for what you do.
I always enjoy coming to be with you because you hold such beautiful space and so insightful and so loving and so heart-based with your mission. It's always beautiful to be with you, so thank you.
I appreciate that so much, brother. Until next time, then.
Take care.